Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News and the Rush Hour podcast. Well, in this video, we'll have a couple topics, but the main topic is Rachel Lindsay's response to what sort of work conditions might have led to Devin getting on this past season of The Bachelorette. Of course, you know the story. Jen Tran was the lead, and Devin, I guess, had a restraining order that the show did not find, either through incompetence or whatever. And Rachel Lindsay is a great person to discuss this, as she's got her podcast, Higher Learning. She's always kind of diving deeper into, social topics. And, having been the lead on the show, of course, one of those is the way her season went. She had a contestant named Lee on her season who had super racist stuff posted in the past. And, it ended up being maybe a productive conversation that they had at the live show where they talked, but it's like, did she need to be put in that position? I think is more of the question. So casting has always been an issue in the digital and social media age, and she's here to expose it. I'm also going to quickly discuss the Clayton Brandon Jones interview. I covered this actually yesterday on my podcast. This morning on my podcast, The Rush Hour with Dave Neal. On the weekends, I do a longer form interview, and every once in a while, I do a Q&A. And boy, did I ever do a Q&A. I answered most of these questions. People were asking about my personal life, fatherhood, beefs in the Bachelor world. I talked about the, small minority of people that were upset. Maybe it's a large majority, who knows, with my opinions and coverage over this Devin scandal. My sort of blend of content hasn't really changed in the way I cover this stuff, and I explain myself there. It's a long episode, but I think it's a good one if you want to kind of catch up on a state of the Dave and what we have going on. But yeah, lots of tea, lots of things to discuss. This one question I did not get to: how much do you make a month doing YouTube and podcasting? This was submitted past the deadline. I talk about this all the time on my Patreon, patreon.com/Dave Neal. We've built a nice little industry here in the YouTube podcasting Patreon world. And if anyone's interested in knowing the numbers and the stats behind the scene, I have all of that for you. So anyhow, you can go to the Rush Hour podcast. I actually have a QR code right there. You can just scan it with your phone if you want to listen to that and get nosy, because that's what we're here for, right? To get nosy. So again, before I get into what Rachel had to say, we also covered this. I'm going to be making more content based on this. This is just the teaser trailer, but I have to share it with you. I'm just not prepared to, I haven't listened to the full thing yet. I'm taking timestamps and kind of breaking it down. But here was an interesting interview that Brandon Jones did with Clayton. Brandon Jones, of course, was engaged to Serene Russell. Not only, I guess this interview is getting blasted on Instagram. It's so funny. The people that watch the full episode, which I haven't, so I'm not giving my opinion on it, but the people that watch the full episode on YouTube seem to be empathizing with Brandon, but the people that watch this trailer seem to be roasting him. One of the people here is Serene's brother. So here's what Brandon had to say.
Going through this every single day, and I'm crying every single day. I'm just like fearful of my life every single day. It got to a point where I was just like, yo, do I want to do this anymore, man? Is this gonna be my life from now on? Because I don't want this to be my life from now on. Like, I'll get 8 calls at 5 in the morning, and I gotta talk to her till 3. And if I don't talk to her, she's gonna release the 80 videos that she has of secretly recorded fights. She's gonna go on the podcast and ruin my life. And I just heard this over and over and over and over. And then all of a sudden, boom, I'm back on the show. It's just like, yo, what's gonna happen today? And then my anxiety started going up, and it started leading into depression, and I didn't know who to go to, and I couldn't afford therapy at the time because I'm paying for this highly priced apartment, and I'm dealing with her, and then now I'm moving at the same time too, and it's just like, and then I'm going through this every single day, and I'm crying every single day. I'm just like fearful of my life every single day, because she's like, I'm gonna do this, I have a plan, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna ruin your life. Yo, over and over. And she's like, the whole time I was like, hey, I'm sorry that I hurt you. So I just took accountability for it. Like, oh, should I even be feeling this right now? Like, maybe I should, maybe I do like deserve this, right?
Interesting stuff. Again, this is a full episode out on Clayton's page. But what's interesting is the comment section spilling out WrestleMania. I'm assuming is Serene's brother, said Clayton. For someone who advocates so much for mental health awareness, I figured you, of all people, wouldn't facilitate this type of public display of delusion, considering your brother witnessed some of it himself and even called you to tell you to have someone check on her. Someone said, how do you know what goes on behind closed doors? And he said, because he was there part of the time. So he referred to Brandon's behavior as abusive. It's messy. It's so, I'm like, what's in the star? I'm not an astrology guy, but I'm like, what is in the stars that these fights and these things are being aired out publicly in the Bachelor world? They're all like, almost equally would be like the biggest story of the year. And it's all happening like right now. It's wild. Well, here's Rachel. Here's what she had to say on Ringer Reality TV. It's the podcast network she's a part of. It's called Morally Corrupt. We're going to listen to what she has to say. I will sparingly interject. How about this? I'll only let myself interject 3 times, okay? So I'll give myself, because people say don't interrupt. So I'll only give myself 3 times. Here we go. Morally Corrupt, a show on all things Bravo. Spotify original. All right, get into it.
Got a little something she wants to talk about.
I just have a question for Rachel. And just so everyone knows, okay. I did not ask her this beforehand. So I'm really interested in what she's going to say. But I'm sure you have seen the news that Devin from The Bachelorette, he was the winner. And after he won, he broke up with Jen pretty quickly after and was absolutely awful at the finale. And basically like didn't really apologize and was just kind of like trying to, he went on there to try to make himself look better, somehow made himself look worse. And now it's come out that he had a restraining order prior to being cast on The Bachelorette. And I just wanted to know, as someone who was a lead for that franchise, do you feel, at least on your season, did you feel like you had like zero worries about what men were casted? And like, do you think that they should do a better job, I guess? And I don't even know if you're allowed to answer this. So
of course they should. Of course they should do a better job.
I don't care. I'm going to answer it. I don't know if I'm allowed or not either. It had stopped me before. But I mean, will you go through a lot of tests before you are even allowed to be on the show, which cancels out a lot of people? It's been told to me what most people get canceled out for is the STD test.
Herpes.
Because we're tested for all of that. And a lot of times people don't pass. They're unaware that they have something. And so like a lot of good candidates don't make it through.
I've never submitted.
We're tested for that. We go through a psych test. We go through a criminal background test. And I would assume that that doesn't just mean going through social media, which we've seen them fail at time and time again before, but also criminal. Like if there's something else out there that could be harmful to the other contestants or to the lead in itself. So when I walked on, I felt fully safe to explore fantasy suites however I wanted to. Also, the fact that I wasn't with some person who has done something in the past that might affect me if they're the one that's chosen. So it's wild to me that, I've seen some of this stuff come out because it's just been such a big deal, even without watching the show. It's wild to me that this is something that could slip through the cracks. It's wild to me that they didn't know this. So either it slipped through the cracks or they knew about it and didn't make it a big deal, or they didn't think it was a big deal, which both are so wrong. And the fact that Jen, because it's one thing, this is why this is so wild to me. We hear about things slipping through the cracks, but it's never, and now I'm not talking about social media, I'm talking about like a criminal past. We've heard about it before, but it's never been somebody who's made it this far. It's never been somebody who's been chosen.
Yeah, it's a good point. Here's my first interruption. It's a good point. A lot of times if Devin, if they found this out beforehand, there would have been not much to the story. I mean, the story would have obviously been heartbreaking, the affidavit and things like that, but it would be kind of like, well, all right, F that guy, but instead there's people that, watch this show and, either root for him or, root for their love together. So when that fails and you get all this information, that empathy and that storyline has already been built. What it really does is it makes the whole season absolutely unwatchable, really, because there's other seasons you go back and you go, well, let's go watch Hannah Brown's season. We'll find out about Jed. We'll talk about Tyler. The Luke P's pretty nutty, all these things. You go back and watch this immediately and you go, oh boy, this is, this is not, you can't do it.
I could be wrong about this. So the fact that she picked this guy, wanted to be with this guy, cried over this guy, not said yes, proposed to this man.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a history of, to the point where, I don't know the full details, but to the point where he got a restraining order granted against him. And I think he ripped it up in front of her.
No,
and
he lit it on fire.
Lit it on fire, violated it. And she could have been this is extreme. This is a big deal. This isn't me shitting on the show for the way they handle race. This is actually protecting people. It's terrifying to me. And the show needs to figure this out. How do you not do it? If Reality Steve can figure this out, you should be able to figure it out.
Right.
Wow. Big. I mean, and by the way, I know this, she didn't mean this in an insulting way, but it is so funny. If that dumbass Steve in Texas can figure it out, yeah, but it's like, if a guy can do this on his own with his own resources, where's the team that literally is paid to vet this? Where are they? And it actually brings up a different point. I mean, to give Steve credit, people come to him because he has amassed this audience and there's a trust there. So I'm sure people pointed him in the right direction. I don't know for sure. Like these are the types of things I don't always ask Steve, because you never want to ask someone about their sources and things like that. It's like a professional courtesy. If he wanted to tell me, it'd be one thing. But my guess is when something like this happens, you've got like the gay best friend who released the TikTok video claiming things. Those are the types of people, those advocates that go, hey, why don't you go into the Baton Rouge Police Department and try to pull a case number? You know what I mean? So you have to know where to look. And when we look at the Clayton Echard, Laura Owens case, that was the same scenario where the more I started to look for other restraining orders in other situations of abuse and manipulation and fraud, the more I found them. And because they were there in plain sight, it's just no one was looking for them. Now, the question here is, shouldn't the producers have been looking for this? Shouldn't the criminal trespassing have shown up on a police report, on a background search?
All the tools. You've been doing this for 20 plus years. How did you not know this man had a restraining order? How? I don't get it.
That both Juliet and I had the same question, and I didn't even think that they knew and just didn't. Like, if they knew, they were hoping it just never came out, which
my guess, I guess is the last I can interrupt. My guess here is they didn't know, because it's not like he's some knight in shining armor, Tyler Cameron type. He's perfect. Just slide this. He's just a normal dude, a super, super normal dude. I don't even mean this in any disrespect. There are a million people that could fill in the shoes of what Devin offered. It wasn't like he had this great company or backstory, none of that. He was just a normal guy on paper. The paper that, not the actual background report paper, which they clearly didn't look at. So I don't see any scenario where they would have had that liability. I think it's like most things, gross incompetence. That's the issue I see with most of the government stuff. Oh, there's this deep state issue. No, the Secret Service is grossly incompetent or understaffed or this. I don't think there's one big conspiracy. You may disagree with me. That's just sort of like where I stand, where the most common thing is usually the most obvious, which is that somebody messed this up.
I feel like it is a huge reach for a platform that big.
Right.
But yeah.
And if it slipped through the cracks, how did you not do a simple search? Simple. It's not like he was a juvenile and this was sealed. This was public information out there. Redditors, I'm sure, figured this out as well, or were able to do a deep dive. So I don't know. Like, do you not care? Did you want this to be a storyline? Did you want in no way does this make the franchise look good.
No, also you're going to now eliminate some candidates that would want to be the lead that are good leads. Like, there's a reason why people we know of now that they asked other people to be the Bachelorette before Jen. There's a reason why they passed. And I feel like you need to be able to protect the lead and the contestants. Otherwise, like, the show's over.
Yeah, and even though I didn't watch the show and I don't follow, once I saw the finale, like what people were saying about the finale, I was doing a deep TikTok dive to get caught up on what was happening. Because I was like, why is this such a big deal? And then in doing that, I saw that there were other shitty contestants as well on her season. The men on this, that they pick on these shows are terrible, it seems like. I know they're not all that way, but they just seem to be the worst of the worst when it comes to men. And luckily for Jen, she was able to get this information out before she went down too far. I know her heart is hurting and this is embarrassing for her that she chose this guy and he did her in this way. But thank God you found out before the engagement went longer and you married this guy. And then, you know, he's trying to take you for half of everything and receives support as well. You know, spousal support, both. So like, thank God in the long run it's going to work out.
Oh, actually, I didn't know if we would get a mention of Brian Abasolo here, but Rachel says, good thing she found this out early. It didn't waste her time and isn't having half her money taken. Oh, that's funny. Now, of course, the judge ruled in Rachel Lindsay's divorce case with Brian Abasolo that he's entitled to, I don't know what he said, $13,000 a month based on her $43,000 a month money that she makes. He's whatever. You guys understand that story. But hey, she's allowed to say it's BS as much as she wants. You know what I mean? Judge made the order. She knows that as a lawyer. It sucks for sure. She probably says, I wish I would have found out about him sooner. Not to compare Brian Abasolo to Devin. Brian Abasolo doesn't have a track record in the court system. He passed his background check. So, they talk about how awful the finale was. Here's the thing. Look, could anything predict what we found out about Devin? I don't think so, because you could look at any contestant on any season and go, oh, they have narcissistic traits. Oh, they're an asshole. Oh, they're a con man. Or they're here for the wrong reasons. It doesn't mean that they've had those crazy, like the restraining order on fire. Again, it's easy to see that correlation afterwards. Hindsight's 2020. We can all be Monday morning quarterbacks, but I kind of reject the idea that, oh yeah, you knew this was coming. No, come on. And that's why the people that, I talked about on my podcast that are like, oh, you all these things, we warned you, this was all gonna. Okay, sure. Yeah, because every time there's a bad guy, we then find out he's got this crazy story afterwards. No, this is just a kind of unique scenario, but this should never happen. And I guess you wonder, 20 seasons of The Bachelor, they end up putting 30 guys on the show, 25 guys on the show. How many of them will something fall through the cracks? This doesn't happen too often. It's normally, and again, I'm not giving the show the benefit of the doubt. I think they should have some sort of public audit. They should audit their process to see who dropped the ball. Find out, did this come out? And if so, what did Devin say about it? And why did you just take his word? Isn't that insane? They find out, oh yeah, there was this thing about this affidavit of you breaking in. Oh no, I didn't break in at all. And they're just like, okay, good, moving on. You know what I mean? That's the interesting part. But anyhow, yeah, so they do a psych test, they do a criminal background test, they do an STD test. So I guess if Devin has anything he can take away from this experience, it's that he passed the STD test. Congratulations. Get him a trophy. Anyhow, interesting stuff from them. And you don't have to watch the season to see this all play out. I think like Rachel was interesting. She goes, yeah, this is different than, talking about someone's past as racist or someone's past as, homophobic or someone's past as just a bad person, because this gets into like, the physical violence or the sort of fear of your safety, because in an intimate relationship like this, at the very least, you should be able to express yourself without fear that you're going to need a restraining order to get rid of this guy. Wild stuff. Now, just real quickly, the question about why they cast bad men. Maybe good men don't want to do the show. Maybe good men don't want to deal with the BS of the show, because it's hard to come out of it looking good. You're going to have your whole past analyzed. You're going to have your whole, you see like every year. And I don't know if it's a gender thing, or maybe, you could say, well, it's not a gender thing. Men are just the worst. Okay, sure. But every year there are TikTok videos that come out exposing the guys, right? You don't see many TikTok videos come out where it's some random dude exposing a girl. And again, you might say that's because these guys are a-holes. Okay, well then we can't have the further conversation. And that might be part of it, but it just might be that like it's common that your dirty laundry gets aired. And if you're out there doing a good thing, even if you're a good guy, it's like some of these guys are, you might have, had a bad breakup. Again, not relating it to Devin's. That was like the wrong. I'm talking more about like what leads men to not want to be on the show. Good men, at least. Or you just argue, oh, there aren't any good men. And that could be the case too, that you go, all right, men in their 20s, men that would be good on the show, like successful, good looking men, wouldn't want to be on the show because they're snabbed. So then they're nabbed up. So then you have this supply chain issue. You have economics issue where the supply is not there because the men have a demand in real life. How many of the Tyler Camerons in the world need to go on The Bachelor to find love when they can just, smile, promote their teeth whitening and go meet 100 people out there? So interesting stuff. There's your Saturday morning content. Again, if you want a deeper dive into a lot of the things going on, both in my life, in the Bachelor world, and all of that other stuff, you can go check out the Rush Hour podcast today. We got it all. All right. Have a good one, everyone. We'll see you later.